And also the same is true of this attack in Basra. Basra is in the south of Iraq, where right near the U.S. supply lines coming up from Kuwait, which I think is a big vulnerability, they think. So securing Basra can be part of securing U.S. supply lines. You know, again, I'm not trying to offer this as here's what it is, A, B, C, D, E. I don't know that, but all of these things are, you can see some patterns in them and some potentialities to be aware of and to be understanding what they need. So securing Basra is a form of securing against attack on U.S. supply lines, which would be a big vulnerability in the event of war on Iran. That's also a very flat area, so if troops are going to move one way or another, that's where they could come through. And then in Deborah's talk this morning, she mentioned the Andrew Coburn article yesterday, which did say that there had been 6 weeks ago there was a new finding that unleashed this whole level of covert operations against Iran, which, you know, is it conceivable that they're going to try to step up the diplomatic pressure, that they're going to try to step up the covert operations, that they're going to squeeze Iran economically, that they're going to maybe do even some limited strikes to try to fracture this regime and go at it that way? That's not out of the realm of possibility. But so far, no, you know, the Velvet Revolution scenario, which is what they hoped for in 2003, they hoped that the shocks of the revolution in Iraq would start a velvet revolution like in Eastern Europe after the fall of the Soviet Union, where the masses just kind of, you know, the government crumbles and the people, you know, form another government close to the U.S. That has not emerged, which argues against them simply relying on that kind of thing. Then the other thing, there's diplomatic offensive, there's new sanctions in the works. And remember, people were saying after the NIE, the U.S. can never get sanctions. Hey, they got them 2 months later, you know. In fact, I think the NIE might have helped them get sanctions by getting the Europeans on board. You know, and there's a new thing. I think even claims that of having Robert Gates instead of Don Rumsfeld, the bloody-jawed wolf Don Rumsfeld, you've got Mr. Reasonable Robert Gates up there. I think that also helps their war preparations in disarming people. The last thing you want to do is say you're the one that's initiated this war of aggression. You want to make it seem like, oh, we didn't want a war, but these people gave us no choice, you know. That's hence all the, that's also can be part of this thing of these military people repeating over and over, we don't want war, we want diplomacy, we don't want war, even as they prepare for war. The other thing about the political terrain I just want to mention is, and I'm sure you guys talked about this earlier, is the abysmal lack of outrage about these threats. Look at sanctioning a country is an act of aggression. Building military alliances against a country is an act of aggression. Fomenting covert operations and killing people is an act of aggression. Seizing people legally in another country is an act of aggression. Threatening nuclear obliteration is criminal under international law. These are all the things the U.S. we know is doing. There's no uncertainty about any of this. Maintaining 150 or 60,000 troops and 28,000 in Afghanistan in illegal wars of occupation and aggression there's no uncertainty about that. All these are criminal things that should be denounced, protested against, and stopped now. And it's shameful that there isn't more. And so, I mean, I'm just very glad the World Can't Wait is talking about this. We need to start opposing this, you know, as you guys have been talking about right now. And here's the other, well, I mean, look, talk about it. You know, people say, just one little digression here. People say, well, gee, if we leave, if we stay in Iraq, we can't just pick up and leave. Oh, yes, you can. And yes, you should pick up and leave, because look at the consequences of the U.S. staying in Iraq. 1 million people killed, 4 to 5 million displaced. I just read an article the other day. Having destroyed Iraq, Americans are indifferent to the fate of its people and 5 million. True statement, you know. But also look at it from the dimension of Iran. Having 150,000 troops in Iraq is number one, a tripwire, number two, a pretext, number three, an entanglement, and number four, a military force that all makes war with Iran more likely and more bloody. Another reason to end this. One other thing, I mean, in terms of the political terrain, I also felt Hillary Clinton's statement, and then what Barack Obama said as well, he joined in on this, is whatever their tactical or strategic differences may be over Iran, when push comes to shove, they are going to go along with an attack on Iran. They just told us that with their obliterate comment, and then Obama saying, I'm not for obliteration, but the Iranians should know that if they mess around, I'm going to be just as forceful as anybody else. So that is also a signal, in my opinion, to the Bush regime that, hey, we're not going to stand in your way. And then finally, there's a whole locking in the trajectory. I know you guys have talked a lot about this question of the Bush regime trajectory. You know, the appointment of Petraeus, keeping the level of troops at 140,000 even, you know, up through the election, doing these other military appointments, all that's a question of locking in the whole trajectory of this regime, or an attempt to do that. And it was interesting because when Petraeus was put in, you know, as head of CENTCOM, replacing Fallon, just happened recently, there was a discussion of this, and again, one of these imperialist experts said, look, it's very, very rare to replace somebody in a position like that any sooner than 3 years. So you see they're putting things in place. Now I want to talk some about the consequences of an attack. I mean, they're really, again, we do not know what the military scenario, if it's going to happen, or exactly what it could be. CBS recently reported, and by the way, Mullen, this is another thing, for the first time, Admiral Mullen, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said, we are considering military options. I've never read that directly from the Pentagon in this kind of an immediate time way. This came out a couple of weeks ago. And in reporting this, CBS said targets would include everything from the plants where weapons are made to the headquarters of the organization known as the Quds Force, so on and so forth. And there have been other scenarios for attacks on Revolutionary Guard forces in Western Iran. There have been scenarios of up to 10,000 targeted strikes in a wave of shock and awe. And let's not forget that once war is the most unpredictable of enterprises, and once these things get going, you don't know where they're going to go. Witness Iraq. The National Academy of Sciences did a study of Earth-penetrating nuclear weapons, which it estimated, if used in Iran, could kill up to 1 million people. Physicians for Social Responsibility did a study of this around Isfahan. This is a city I've actually visited, a beautiful city in south central Iran, which is known for this beautiful blue tile and ceramic work. I don't know if people have seen pictures of mosques. There's sort of this dark turquoise blue, just a beautiful historic place. 3 million people could be killed by radiation within 2 weeks. 35 million in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India would be exposed to increased levels of cancer-causing radiation.